Welcome to another deep dive.
Okay.
This time, we're going to be talking about something called spatial ecopoetics.
Sounds pretty intense.
It kind of does sound intimidating.
Yeah.
But basically, we're going to be talking about poetry and how it can help us see the natural world in a new way.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Okay.
It's kind of moving away from like the typical nature poems about, specific landscapes and that kind of thing.
Oh, right.
And more into like the vastness of space,
Okay.
which is a bit unsettling, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
And helping us unpack all of this,
Yeah.
we have our expert who has been looking into a dissertation by Amber Pearson from Florida State University.
Right.
So
Yeah.
before we get lost in space,
Okay.
could you give us kind of a quick overview of what Pearson is arguing in her dissertation?
Well, I think she's really looking at the limitations of just focusing on place
Okay.
in terms of environmental thought.
Right.
So she uses the example of bioregionalism, which, sounds nice. The idea that we can all like re-inhabit a place.
Yeah.
But it's not really practical for everyone.
Right. Particularly in like a world where people are moving around so much more.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So bioregionalism is limited.
Yeah, and there's all these questions of like who gets to define what the boundaries are.
Right.
Like it gets really
Yes.
complicated really quickly.
Okay. So if focusing on place is kind of problematic,
Yeah.
how does she suggest we approach our relationship with the non-human world then?
Well, this is where poetry comes in.
Okay.
She's saying we need to kind of shift from place to space.
Okay.
So thinking spatially instead of thinking about specific places.
Okay.
And she thinks that poetry can help us to explore this concept of space.
Okay.
Because it's a way of kind of acknowledging like the vastness and mystery of the non-human world
Right.
that we don't understand
Right.
and like can't really ever fully grasp.
Okay, so it's kind of embracing the idea that there's always more out there
Yes.
than we can ever understand. Right.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how this is more than just,
Yeah.
just nice descriptions of nature.
All right, it's not about like pretty sunsets or majestic mountains.
Right.
It's about like using language to explore the tension between like how we see things
Right.
and the actual vastness of the non-human world.
I see.
So it's kind of like, I think of it like language as a tool, right?
Right.
And like any tool, it's got its limits.
Right.
And so spatial ecopoetics
Yeah.
is kind of using the limits of language to highlight what's beyond that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah.
Like-
it's kind of pointing towards the mystery
Right.
and the otherness of the natural world.
Okay. I like using the limitations to
Mhm.
kind of highlight what's beyond them.
Yeah.
Like
It's-
using a flashlight in a cave. Right.
Exactly.
You can only see so far,
Yeah.
and the rest is shrouded in shadow.
Yeah. And you know there's more there,
Right.
but you can't see it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the key ideas that Pearson explores is this idea of ecomimesis,
Okay.
which is a term that the philosopher Timothy Morton came up with.
Right.
And it's basically about like trying to capture the essence of nature
Right.
through language.
Okay.
And Morton argues that like this can't really ever fully work.
Okay.
You can't really ever fully replicate like what it feels like to stand in a forest
Right.
or, the vastness of the ocean.
Right. You can't put that into words.
You can't put that into
Yeah.
words. Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's more about like evoking that feeling
Yeah,
rather than trying to perfectly capture it.
right. I think that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Pearson mentions a few poets
Yeah.
that kind of exemplify this approach.
Yeah, she talks about Charles Olson,
Okay.
who was very skeptical of like straightforward representations of nature.
Okay.
Like he didn't think that we could just like accurately depict the natural world using language
Right.
because language shapes how we see things just as much as it reflects them. So what he's interested in is like the process of perception itself.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
how do we see things?
Right. Yeah.
And how does the language shape that?
Okay. I've read a little bit of Olson,
Yeah.
and I find him really difficult.
He's pretty challenging.
Yeah. So can you give us an example of how this worked, like how he actually puts this into practice?
Yeah. So one example is this poem he has called The Kingfishers.
Okay.
And instead of like just describing the kingfisher, like what it looks like,
Right.
he's using all these like fragmented images and like shifting perspectives
Okay.
to kind of represent how even our perception of a place
Okay.
is shaped by like the vastness of space that surrounds it.
Okay. I see.
So like
So he's using the kingfisher as a lens to explore,
Yeah, I think so.
like the limits of human perception. He's
Well,
not just talking about the bird.
right. He's talking about how we see the
Right.
world
Right.
and how we make meaning out of it.
Right. And he's
And
using
then
all these unconventional techniques to do that.
you like shifting perspectives,
Yeah.
fragmented imagery,
Oh, okay.
all that kind of stuff.
It kind of reminds us that our understanding is always limited.
Yes, definitely always partial and incomplete.
Right. Okay. And it makes you realize, we do kind of take for granted
Yeah,
that we think we have things figured out,
right.
but maybe we don't.
Maybe we don't.
Okay. So Olson is all about like challenging our perception
Yeah.
of things.
Challenging our assumptions.
Right.
Yeah.
Who else does Pearson talk about?
She talks about James Schuyler,
Okay.
who's another really interesting poet.
Okay.
His poetry kind of embraces the idea of failure
Okay.
and limitation.
Okay.
So instead of like striving for like perfect understanding,
Right.
he's saying like, we should just kind of accept the world as it is
Okay.
without trying to impose our own like narratives or categories onto it.
Okay. So he's embracing ambiguity,
Yeah.
the limitations.
Yeah, and finding beauty in that. Like finding beauty in the imperfections of human perception.
Okay. So instead of, trying to understand everything, he's just saying like,
It's just the thing. What's
wow.
what he says in one of his poems.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a line from his poem, December.
December.
Yeah, and he just says, it's just the thing.
It's just the thing.
And I think that just kind of perfectly encapsulates like his whole philosophy.
Okay.
He's just like accepting the world,
Right.
in all its messiness and complexity.
Right. Like without judgment.
Without judgment.
Like not trying to understand it.
Not trying to explain it.
It's just the thing.
It's just the thing.
Okay. I like that a lot.
Yeah,
And there's a real sense of like liberation in that,
I think so.
right? Like if we can kind of accept things,
Yeah,
as they are,
right.
then maybe we can let go of some of that need to
Yeah.
control and define everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So we can kind of be open to the mystery and the wonder
Right.
of the non-human world.
And not feel the need
To explain it all away.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got Olson challenging our perception,
Yeah.
and then we've got Schuyler encouraging us to accept.
To accept limitations?
Right.
Yeah.
And who else is on this list
Let's see.
of Spatial Ecopoetics all-stars?
So another important figure is Lynn Heginian.
Lynn Hegirian.
Like,
Okay.
yeah, her work is really interesting because it's all about making both language and identity
Okay.
feel unfamiliar.
Okay, so there's that theme again of like
Yeah.
breaking out of the familiar.
Yeah. Breaking out of like our comfortable ways of
Right.
seeing and understanding the world.
Okay.
And even ourselves.
Okay, and how does she do that? Like what are the specific techniques?
She uses a lot of unconventional techniques.
Okay.
Like one is called parataxis.
Parataxis.
Yeah. It's where you like put phrases or clauses
Okay.
next to each other
Okay.
without any conjunctions.
Okay.
So it creates this kind of feeling of disorientation.
I see.
It's like you're kind of like forced to piece together the meaning in a new way.
Okay.
She also uses a lot of pronoun shifting.
Pronoun shifting.
Yeah. So the I in her poems
Right.
is constantly changing,
Okay.
which also creates this kind of like sense of fragmentation and instability.
So she's intentionally like making the reader work
Yes. That's
and challenging our expectations of what.
She doesn't want to like
Right.
give you easy answers or like comfortable narratives.
Right. She wants you to.
She wants you to experience the world
Right.
and yourself
Right.
in like a totally new way.
And embrace that strangeness.
Yes. Embrace the strangeness, the complexity of it all.
Okay, so we've got these poets, Olson, Schuyler, Heginian,
Yeah.
all dealing with this concept of space
Right.
in their own ways.
Yeah.
But what does this all mean for us as
Yeah.
as readers?
That's the big question.
Why should we care about spatial ecopoetics?
Yeah.
What's the takeaway here?
Well, I think if we zoom out a little bit, it's about challenging us to rethink our whole relationship with the non-human world.
Okay.
Like it's not about dominating nature or controlling it
Right.
or even fully understanding it.
Right.
It's about like recognizing our place within this like vast and complex
Right.
and often unsettling web of life
Okay.
that we're all a part of.
So it's about humility,
Yeah, I think
like
our-
acknowledging that,
recognizing that we're not the center of the universe.
right, that
Yeah.
there are these forces at play that are
Yeah,
beyond our.
beyond our comprehension,
Right.
definitely.
Yeah. This has been a really interesting conversation so far.
It's been fun.
So thank you for guiding us through all these ideas.
Yes.
And to our listeners, we're just getting started.
Okay.
So stick with us. We'll be back in just a minute
Sounds good.
to talk about more spatial ecopoetics.
All right.
Welcome back to our deep dive into spatial ecopoetics.
Yeah.
Before the break, we were talking about poets like